All right. Hello, welcome everyone. I see we still have a number of participants filing in. Okay, just as a note for everyone, if you we are in a webinar format today, so we won't be able to see you or hear you necessarily. We are anticipating presenting a number of plans and graphics to you. So just sit tight. We'll be starting in a couple minutes. You'll be able to give us feedback and ask questions in a number of ways that I'm going to let our project team discuss. Just to introduce myself before we get started, my name is Brian Bolzak. I work for the Montgomery County Planning Commission. I'm a planner there. And Montgomery County is the sponsor for this project that you're tuning in for.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Matt Ludwig with NV5. I'm the project manager for the engineering planning consultant team. We'll go ahead and get the presentation up on the screen. So you're here tonight for the Cross County Trail West Advanced Feasibility Study. This is the third public meeting and final public meeting of the feasibility study process, which we will recap here shortly. Brian and I introduced ourselves. I will go ahead and introduce Ramya Sivakumar with NV5. She's an active transportation engineer with our group, and she is going to get into to talk about overall project and the southern segment of the study area. Ramya?
Thank you, Matt. This study focused on closing two clear gaps in the Cross County Trail Network, which are referred to in this study as the South segment and the North segment. The South segment runs between the future Germantown Pike overpass and the Erdenheim Farms section of trail at Joshua Road. And
Ramya, can I put you on pause for just a second?
Sure.
Your voice was, the volume was getting really soft there.
Oh, sorry.
That's still a little low.
Oh, is that better?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
So I'll go back to the study limits. The south segment runs between the future Germantown Pike overpass and the Erdenheim Farms section of trail at Joshua Road. And the north segment runs between the northern limit of the shared use portion of the Green Ribbon Trail and the Fort Washington Regional Rail Station. In general, this is the process that we followed to complete the feasibility study. The items in bold are related to public involvement, which has included both in-person and online platforms. So about a year ago, the first public meeting was held to get a sense of what people want to see and access from these trail segments. And following that meeting, we used the feedback that we received to develop proposed trail alternatives, which were presented at the second public meeting in March of this year. Since then, in addition to gathering your feedback and continuing coordination with community members such as yourselves, we've also been coordinating with stakeholders like business owners and agencies who have facilities in the area that the trail might interact with in the future, like SEPTA, for example, with their regional rail line and station. So that's really helped us tweak the alternatives presented in March, and we're here in December of 2023 to share those final preferred routes. And you'll have the opportunity to ask any final questions and or express any concerns that you might not have been able to previously. And here is the preferred route for the south segment, and it may look pretty familiar to a lot of you already. When the feasibility study is published, you'll be able to view the route and its description in more detail. But one thing that we did want to emphasize is that one of the objectives of this route was maximizing the use of public land, especially on the heels of developments like the township acquiring the Abolition Hall parcel and the adjacent parcel in the fall of last year. I think that was just right before the first public meeting in November. We also wanted to share just a few other major points of interest on the south segment, that it starts at the future bridge over Germantown Pike and Plymouth Creek. Then it continues running south and crosses Butler Pike onto the Abolition Hall parcel. And one more thing is that the area off Butler Pike has been flagged as a location for a new trailhead and parking lot to service trail users. And the current route does also include a spur connection to Friends Lane, which will be discussed further in detail in a little bit. But the last item we wanted to highlight on the south segment is that finally the trail crosses in the Wissahickon connector. And we just want to make sure that's done safely. So the recommended route includes a potential traffic signal to facilitate a safe trail crossing. And we received a lot of helpful feedback from the March round of public involvement. We found that most people generally found this route favorable, but you're identify some key concerns, like making sure that the trail crossings across those high volume busy roadways like Butler Pike and Joshua Road can be done safely, and making sure that any environmental or geological concerns like the sinkholes or any, like scour or erosion or drainage issues are addressed adequately during design. And then the last thing that we wanted to highlight before moving on to the north segment was to do a little zoom in on this Friends Lane connection, which would run along a township-owned strip right-of-way. So adding this trail spur would give people in the neighborhood, so all of those parcels that are outlined in yellow, more direct access to the trail. Right now, these properties are currently landlocked, with the only real way out to the broader community, which includes PW High School through Germantown Pike, which is very busy and poses a lot of dangers to walkers and bikers, as I'm sure lots of you can attest to. And with that, I am going to hand it over to Matt to start discussing the north segment.
All right. Thanks, Ramya. And thanks everybody for being patient with us with the little technical difficulties we had. If there's anything that you missed, we'll get into questions and answers at the end, and we'll be certainly happy to do a little bit deeper dive into anything. So yes, the north segment, when we presented these alternatives to the public in March, we asked for your feedback at that point. We gave multiple kind of pros and cons on these three alternatives. So working from left to right, alternative A1 started at the very northern end of the existing trail within Fort Washington State Park, crosses Skipback Pike at what would be a new stoplight, and then generally follows the Green Ribbon Trail all the way up to Lafayette Avenue, and then makes its way towards the traffic signal at Bethlehem Pike and the Lafayette Avenue connector. Alternative A2 follows about 40% of that route, would cross Wissahickon Creek just north of the Turnpike, take an alternative route along Sandy Run to get to that same point. So A1 and A2 generally follow the Wissahickon Creek corridor. But then we looked at alternative B, which is shown in orange there on the right side. We looked at an alternative alignment that would generally follow the Bethlehem Pike corridor. The positives to this one were being able to connect to some of the major historical and cultural sites within Whitemarsh, Mather's Mill, Hope Lodge, the other sections of the state park. the Clifton House. And what alternative B does is it creates new connections where connections don't currently exist. There is no sidewalk or bicycle facilities along Bethlehem Pike. There is an existing hiking path, the Green Ribbon Trail, along Wissahickon Creek. So we took those into consideration and presented that to the public during our March round of feedback. So what we did is we asked people between those three alternatives, and we gave folks another choice, which was not selected very much here, but we wanted to get a sense as to what folks' first, second, and third choices were for the alignment. And there's really no clear front runner that came out of this survey, except for the fact that the people who lived locally within the area of what we'll call the study area, most of those folks preferred alternative B. And again, as I sort of alluded to about a minute ago, alternatives A1 and A2, they're closer to Wissahickon Creek. I'm sure as people can attest to, as recently as this morning saw that there is flooding concerns about the creek, and that obviously brings along maintenance concerns with the trail and erosion and other issues like that. So we worked with Montgomery County and try to understand what the desire for, obviously there's a balance between being in that kind of environment, and from a user experience, it's a peaceful and serene place to be, but the maintenance concerns. And then we did hear from folks that were sensitive to that being currently a hiking only trail, and wanted to keep it that way. So we were sensitive to those thoughts as well. So ultimately, alternative B, again, creates a new path where one does not exist today. It connects those cultural and historical resources in the Whitemarsh area. So it was determined that we ended up going with a modified alternative B. So that route that's shown in the documents that have been shared publicly still starts at the very northern end of the current shared use path within the state park. It does cross at what will be a new traffic signal at Skipback Pike and Militia Hill Road, but then it will continue to follow down Skipback Pike until it gets to Mathers Road, and then follow the rest of that alternative B alignment to go north along the Bethlehem Pike corridor. One benefit to this is that somewhere along the way we had to cross Wissahickon Creek, and because of the floodplain of Wissahickon Creek, it tends to be a wide floodplain. We did work with PennDOT in being able to essentially use the Skipback Pike roadway bridge that goes over Wissahickon Creek, sliding the lanes over, reducing the shoulder widths on that roadway. We'll put up the county would put up a barrier on that bridge to separate the roadway traffic from the trail users. But the big benefit to that is that we're not putting in another bridge in the floodplain in that location. We're using the bridge that's already there. That obviously comes with some cost savings, but it also significantly reduces the amount of impacts that this project would be putting on the floodplain of Wissahickon Creek. As I mentioned, this project will make direct connections to Mathers Mill, Hope Lodge, and the Clifton House. The trail will now connect all of the portions of Fort Washington State Park, and the DCNR, the state park folks, are very excited about that possibility. In order to get across, I mentioned that there's going to be a new traffic signal at Militia Hill Road, Skipback Pike, but to get across Bethlehem Pike between Mathers Mill and Hope Lodge, there would be the installation of a new overhead warning beacon and possibly a protected median in that location to help folks get across Bethlehem Pike. And then, of course, at the north end, there will be a direct connection to the Fort Washington SEPTA Station for commuters getting to the regional rail train. And then the trail will cross underneath the SEPTA track, so it'll be grade separated to get across the regional rail tracks at Sandy Run, and before the trail connects to the existing path that then leads into Upper Dublin. So here is a summary of the entire final preferred trail route for the western sections of the cross-county trail. You can see the line work in green on the far left side being the existing path that comes up to Chemical Road and Germantown Pike, and then the central portions, parts of which are completed and parts of which the county will go to construction in 2024. This is really a big linchpin of the trail network within Montgomery County and the Greater Circuit Trails network. This will close the gap between the Schuylkill River Trail. With the additional work that Montgomery County is doing in this along the Wissahickon Creek Valley, this will eventually connect into Forbidden Drive and Wissahickon Valley Park in Philadelphia. Someday this will connect into the Gresham and the Tookenny Creek trails in Springfield and Cheltenham townships, and then through the connections that Upper Dublin is doing, this will connect into the Power Line Trail, and then through Upper Moreland and Bernathen, eventually to the Pennypack Trail in the far eastern edge of the county. So, how can you get involved? Well, most of you probably found this link through the project website, montgomerycountypa.gov/cross-county-trail-west. So at that website, you can view the concept plans of the trail alignment that drill down into a little bit more detail than what we were able to do in this presentation. We can certainly talk more about those things through the Q&A coming up. We also put together a drone flyover video of the entire alignment that gives you a better sense as to seeing things from an angle and getting a relation as to where the trail might go in relation to buildings and other landmarks in Plymouth and Whitemarsh Townships. And we do have a form on the website where if you have any questions or comments, you can enter those in. You can, if you don't think of them tonight, you have until December 31st to pitch any questions or comments. And then we do have the materials from the previous 2 public meetings that Ramya summarized earlier. All of those materials are also on this website for archival for folks to review if they want to get the full summary of the project to date. So the next steps on the process, as I mentioned, the comments on this plan will be taken through December 31st. The feasibility study phase of this project will be over in January. The county will publish the final feasibility study and post it on the county's website. And then the engineering phase for both of these segments will start in 2024. At this time, there's no timeline on the construction. That will be fleshed out in more detail over the coming year as the engineering phase begins and starts to see some of the more detail on the corridor, and some of those kind of funding commitments are a little bit more solidified. So that's the end of the presentation. We will go ahead and take any questions that people are posting in the Q&A box.
Firstly, I wanted to thank Matt and Ramya for their work through NV5 as the county's consultant on this project. We were very excited about the results of this study, which again have been accumulating over the past year and a half, and we think we have a really good solution for a lot of the challenges that we faced, as well as sort of meeting a lot of people's suggested ideas and revisions and concerns. And so, of course, this is one of many public outreach methods that we've used as a part of this planning process. And we hope this isn't the end of your interest and your engagement with this process. So Matt, yeah, why don't you? Looks like we've got a couple questions in the Q&A box. If you are new to Zoom webinars generally, you should see a Q&A button at the bottom of your window, and then you can of course type in your comment or questions so that we can address it on the air, as it were. So yeah, Matt, I'll kick to you again.
All right, yeah, we'll go ahead and start with the first question. And there was, it's from Elizabeth. She's asking if there's been any stormwater study or traffic study done for the possible Friends Lane connector. So no, not a formal study on that hasn't been done yet. That would be done as a part of the engineering phase of the project. One of the things that we'd be looking at is improving. We know that there's quite a bit of erosion that's going on down there. Existing swale is pretty dated down there. So that's absolutely something that will happen as a part of the next phase of the project. In the engineering phase next year is studying the hydraulics and hydrology of that particular swale. So, you know, any sort of upgrades that need to occur with that in association with potentially building the trail in that location, that would certainly be looked at that time. As far as a traffic study and for that particular location, traffic study, you know, with in regards to people accessing the trail, as Ramya mentioned, there is going to be a new trailhead parking lot that will be located off of Butler Pike. I'm going to go ahead and pull that up here just so we can show that map up on the screen again. So yeah, I'll get my little laser pointer up here on the screen. But there will be a brand new parking lot that's going to be very easily accessible off of Butler Pike. This is something that when people are looking to get on the trail, this is where Google Maps is going to take them to. I know some people, we've heard some comments from folks that live in the Friends Lane area concerned about potential traffic. And I think with the new trailhead coming on Butler Pike, it's going to be such an easy connection for the general public to get to, rather than folks winding their way back through all of these streets to reach the trail, that we don't foresee any sort of traffic problems with that particular stretch. The goal with this, as Ramya noted, is that we want to be able to create connectivity to the neighborhood. This neighborhood that's outlined in yellow, they're completely landlocked. They only have one ingress egress at Germantown Pike. And as the county builds out this active transportation network, it's really important to make these linkages to be able to make it so that residents have alternatives in the way of travel. So we view this spur as a benefit to the neighborhood. It's not to create connectivity for folks from outside of the neighborhood to use it, because it's just not going to be convenient for anybody else who lives outside of the neighborhood.
Just to pick up on that, Matt, you know, our work here at the county is you know, impossible without cooperation from our partner municipalities as a part of this work. And you know, we worked with Whitemarsh Township and Plymouth Township throughout this process, and we will continue to, namely because, you know, much of the you know, the land on which we're building the trail in this area especially is on township property. So we're, you know, we're very you know, cognizant of any concerns that people may bring up. And so that's why we are having meetings like this to sort of gather input. And of course, when we work with Whitemarsh Township, we're not going to sort of go out on our own and to do things that our respective township partners are not in favor of. So so that's sort of why we do these feasibility studies, is to get all of the potential opportunities and challenges out in the open, and to sort of work them out collaboratively when we can. So that is, again, one of the many reasons why we do public outreach as a part of this process as well, to get feedback on such proposals. Thank you for your question.
So Brian, the next question, I'll let you answer this one. It's from Bob. He says that he lives on Flower Town Road and is asking when the construction of the Erdenheim Farm portion will break ground.
A good question. So that this project, as perhaps many local neighbors know, has been in the very close to being finalized stage for many years. But we believe that we're going to be able to start construction sometime in 2024, and very early in the process, much long before any shovels break ground. The community will be notified at that time, especially Whitemarsh Township coordination will be required for construction purposes. So I can't say at this particular time when that will break ground, but we will have a number of months before notice will be given. But I think at this point we're looking probably towards the latter half of 24 as a potential start date. But again, there's going to be significant notice given to township and any stakeholders prior to that happening. And actually related to that, when we're talking about parking, is that there will be a 40-car trailhead parking lot right off of Joshua Road as a part of that segment of development. So that's just another example of how we're trying to accommodate potential users of the trail a little further down the line there, but still significantly as a part of that whole trail system.
All right, the next question is coming from Mike. He's asking about the south segment along Flower Town Road between Colonial Drive and Joshua Road. If the quarry is okay with placing a trail on the north side of Flower Town Road. So yeah, we had several meetings with Highway Materials, quarry, to talk about this particular segment. And we looked at, there's a new traffic signal that Whitemarsh Township will be installing at the intersection of Colonial Drive and Flower Town Road. And they're actually going to build a portion of this project they had enough funding to build about 800, 900 feet of trail on that north side. And the reason that we looked at the north side from Colonial to Joshua was because on the south side, there is a frontage road, and there was a study done a few years ago that did identify the trail as possibly going along that south side of Flower Town all the way to Joshua. That there is, though the homeowners that front that frontage road, they actually have property that goes all the way out to the front of Joshua Road, or excuse me, Flower Town Road. And the county would have to negotiate easements with each and every single individual property owner along there, which would take a lot of time to do. And then even if that wasn't an issue, once you get to the Joshua Road intersection, the right turn lane to go south on Joshua Road, it's a very close distance between that turn lane and the property, the home at the corner there. And it really wasn't going to be comfortable to put the trail in that location. So we did look at putting the trail on the north side. It's probably going to cost a little bit more money to build the trail there just because of the slope of the embankment from the quarry. But Highway Materials, DePaul Group was very cooperative. They're very excited about the project. And, with having a property owner who the county can work with cooperatively, is a huge positive in being able to move this project forward in a timely manner. So that's ultimately how that decision was made in that stretch between Colonial and Joshua Road.
I'd like to add as well to that, Matt, that the township, as a part of a township generated project, is actually as a part of that signal that is being installed on the Colonial Road or Colonial intersection with Flower Town Road. A part of the trail will actually be built by the township in that general vicinity, and then we'll take it, as the county will take it along from there once they finished constructing that piece as well. So this is truly a collaborative effort, which we're engaged in, and we hope to continue with.
All right, next question is about if there's information about tree planting or restoration once the trail is built. I assume there will be a good amount of tree removal to construct the path. So we did look at an alignment here that tried to reduce the amount of tree removals as much as possible. In fact, where the trail comes onto the Abolition Hall parcel after it crosses Butler Pike, we worked with the township to place the trail alignment in the areas where the township is already maintaining. There's a mowed path that goes through that parcel. Excuse me. So we would place the trail. We are placing the trail on that path to reduce any impacts to trees on that particular parcel. As the trail continues to the north, you know, once the county gets into the engineering phase, and we can survey exactly where trees are located, then you know, the design can be made around those trees, and especially save some of those bigger, more mature trees. But absolutely, as a part of the project, there would be planting of new trees wherever possible, working in a landscape plan. The Hobb property where the trailhead will go, I would imagine there will be some trees planted at that location around the parking lot, and stormwater management along with that. So yeah, we will. The design will inform that, and we'll be looking at those sort of things.
We are aware that the township, Whitemarsh Township, has standards about protecting heritage trees or trees of significant sizes. So we are well aware of those conditions that we would, you know, be gladly to work with the township on as well.
Next question from Christopher. He viewed the flyover video and is wondering about at the point where it gets to Flower Town Road on the south side where the residences are located. It says something like no impact on backyards before it crossed over to the quarry side. Is that because there's an existing sidewalk there or an established trail? So that's a very good question, Christopher. I will go ahead. I a slide in reserve because we thought this might come up. To just show a graphic of what that area will look like after the trail improvements come in. So what would occur in that area is the fences would all stay in place. The sidewalk that's there now would actually get removed. So it's a 5-foot sidewalk that's there now. It would be replaced with a 10-foot wide trail, and then the curb line for Flower Town Road would be pushed closer to the actual travel lane. So if you're familiar with it, there's a paved shoulder there right now. We worked with PennDOT to be able to do a modification of this road. The lanes would stay in place. We wouldn't change the lanes at all. There would still be one lane in each direction, but the curb line would move out so to allow that space for a grass buffer and the trail to be located along those fences. So we wouldn't be impacting the backyards. We'd be keeping the fences in place and create a safe environment for people to walk and bike along the road. All right, next question from Mary is, if you're creating a parking lot, she says there is no entrance to our neighborhood and that they want it landlocked. So this is where it's really important. Like the county sent out a letter to the residents of that neighborhood. There is a link within that letter to provide your input. We want to gauge all of the residents of that neighborhood because this is the Friends Lane spur connection can have a lot of positive impact for people who live there. So we definitely encourage folks to take part in that survey. If you live in that neighborhood and you did not see a mailer, please reach out to Brian and I, and we can make sure that that all the residents of the neighborhood can fully participate. Next question is from Walt. He is asking, when is it anticipated to have a working budget? And where will the funding come from for the initial installation and subsequent annual maintenance? Brian, I'll let you tackle that one.
Sure. So we can say right this minute that we do have money that was a part of a federal appropriations bill that is attached to the south segment, the trail, both the trail design as well as the design for the anticipated Germantown Pike Bridge. So that has been already secured. I think it's currently stated in the $2 million range. I don't have the exact number, but that has already been earmarked and selected for this project. And then we expect other types of federal funding to come in for the construction of the south segment. So the engineering phase typically takes between 18 and 24 months to complete, and that's in the normal range. There can certainly be complications and with that process. So numbers can of course change over time when certain funding becomes available or not available, as the case might be. But we have money secured for the design that will take us at least through the next couple of years in the development of this trail. And then we are actually actively working on acquiring construction funding for both this segment as well as for the north segment as well. But that is going to be sort of in development, the budget for that for the next year or two.
All right. Next question from Zadell is asking two related questions. One is, given that the Abolition Hall course and homestead area is listed on the National Register and the local register, and that the trail will traverse this land, do you anticipate any archaeological investigations? And then the second question is, are you collaborating with Whitemarsh Township with regard to heritage tourism potential at this location? So yes, the funding that Brian just mentioned that will be used as a part of the design on that south portion is federal funding. So what that does is it kicks in a lot of requirements. The county will be required to do what's called Section 106, which is cultural and historic resources investigations in that particular area. There's a series of steps that the engineering group will have to go through. So there will absolutely be investigations into that to determine how the trail might impact those and what, if any, mitigations might have to occur as a part of that. Secondly, Whitemarsh has, as we went through this process, Whitemarsh Township was very positive. We worked with the folks at the that are on the historical board, and you know, everyone recognizes the importance of being able to connect, and we're putting the trail, you know, is within seeing distance of the trail. We're not connecting directly up to the building. It just didn't work from a layout perspective, but there absolutely can be signage, interpretive signage, signage about the history of the site, and encouraging people, you know, whether or not there's a spur trail that connects directly up to the home, that remains to be seen and would be coordinated with the township. But there's, you know, obviously a lot of positives to connecting more people to the history of that site and creating an educational component to that.
The same thing will be required when we perform work and design at the Hope Lodge property, which of course is owned by the state, and as well as the properties in and around the Fort Hill area of the Fort Washington State Park. So the very same requirements will likely be in play because of the historic significance and the fact that it's these places are on the National Register. So yes, so we will be, of course, cooperating in all those required reviews and the 106, what's considered the section 106 consulting efforts as well, where community stakeholders as well as municipalities become involved with reviewing whether there is any potential impacts to those resources as a part of the project.
All right, next question from Bill. He says at the last meeting, it was mentioned that the south segment construction wouldn't start until the bridge funding was determined. Are there estimates to when the funding will be identified? I think, Brian, you pretty much covered that already in your previous answers. Yeah, Bill, let us know if you have any other questions related to that. I think Brian covered that well already.
And I guess I would just also reiterate that, we see them as, as a one project at this point, and we're confident that we can receive funding for that for the entire project, so that we don't have to perhaps necessarily phase it, doing the trail first or the bridge first, or so at this point, again, it's still a couple years off until construction becomes feasible. We should have a better picture of the funding outlook in those couple of years.
All right. A comment from Mike saying he's glad that the trail's on the north side of Flowertown. Mary, I see you have a follow-up here. If you could clarify what street that you live on, that would be helpful to be able to answer that question. You might be talking about the Woodbine Spur. Another comment here from Thomas about the Friends Lane Spur. Again, I'll encourage folks to make sure that they, your comment here is noted. It is part of the official record, but also please put that comment within the survey that was sent to the residents. Ed has a comment here saying he likes how the trail connects to historic properties along Bethlehem Pike and Mathers Lane and connecting it through the park. Zadell, follow up on the section 106 review at the Corson property. She's asking how much area beyond the edges of the trail will be investigated, and Hobb properties in the historic district as well. That was one point part of the Corson homestead. So that's something that will be determined. The design team will be working with the state PHMC to determine what the limits, area potential effect will be. So I can't say right now what that would look like. It's different for every project. It's very contextual. It depends on what the project is and what the cultural resources are. And I think it's safe to say that area, that because it's on those two parcels directly, that it obviously will be very involved. And because it's in the historic district, there will certainly be a lot of involvement. So there will be more public meetings about that in the future as it goes through the design process. So this is not the last time you're going to hear about this project in a public meeting. As it goes through the design process, there will be follow-up discussion and reports on the findings.
It's true, yes. So it's determined not only by the area of proposed disturbance of construction activities, but also potential view sheds that may or may not be altered as a part of the project. But again, as Matt said, we just don't know until that process happens. And it actually does, it is pretty comprehensive in its look about what resources are present, what are the federal standards for determining whether there is an impact and whether it's considered an adverse impact. We, of course, have no intention of creating an adverse impact, and we would seek to not, create one. So we would do whatever was born out of that process. But again, at this point, because we're not in design, we simply don't know these areas that will or will not be involved until we get there.
So I see a few more people with questions about Friends Lane and getting the mailers sent to their home. Brian, if it's okay, I'll put your email address up on the screen and folks can reach out to you.
Sure.
With their name and address so that they can get that information sent to you.
They can also, should they want to email me directly, they can also, I'll have their email so I can directly send them any materials that they might want to look at, including the link to the survey.
All right. We still have some more time here. I know there's some more questions coming in. It seems like a lot of people are interested about the Friends Lane. If people have specific questions, we're more than happy to answer them here.
Referring to Thomas's question, we thought we answered your question. We're sorry if we didn't. If you could just reiterate what your question might be. I think your question was, what percentage for your studies show that the use will be by residents of the community based on total daily use? Frequently, so we have many trails in the county system. Most of the time, people within a mile of a trail tend to use it the most. We find that because we are growing our inventory of trails in the county, that people are increasingly not needing to drive very far to get to a trail of their choice. And in fact, it's our goal that fewer people will need to drive at all to trails, which is why we try to accommodate parking for those who may not be within an area where they can walk or bike to a trail. But we also want to ensure that we integrate trails with communities, and especially with neighborhoods or people generally who may want to use other modes of transportation to get to those respective trails. The percentage was higher of people driving to trails when we started doing trails maybe 20 plus years ago. The percentage is getting smaller because people more locally tend to use the trails closest to their homes. But if you're asking for a very specific percentage, again, it totally depends upon the specific trail and the specific neighborhood that we're talking about.
There's a question, somebody in the Q&A asked to put the map on the screen, so I've got that up here. And this whole presentation will be posted on the website sometime this week. We're recording it right now, but we will get that posted so people can stream it and view it at their pleasure. Mike posted a comment about the north segment's alternative B being a surprising finding. Yeah, it's we go through a process, and Mike, I know you're in this world too, so you've seen it as well. But we try to identify all of the opportunities and constraints of these alternatives. We want to have a very thorough dialogue with those that are going to use the trail, those that live nearby it, and consider what the long-term positives and negatives are for the layout of these trails. And it's not to say that the positives of one outweigh another. It's very subjective in how we make those determinations. So this one was an interesting process to go through, because there wasn't a single silver bullet that said one alternative is better than another. When you start to weigh things against each other, again, the positives I noted before, you're creating a new connectivity where there isn't any connectivity now. you're connecting all those historic sites and portions of the state park. So ultimately, that's what was helpful in making that decision. All right, Thomas is asking some follow-up here. Do we have documented studies to show that this trail use and the percent that will be daily used by residents? You know, again, the spur is for the benefit of the residents that live in that particular area. It's not to create parking areas. It's not to you know, act as a through trail. It's part of our job and look as trail planners to look at where can we create connectivity and create positive impacts for folks. So there's no documented study as to how many people per day will use this trail. You know, it's hard to document. You know, Brian, I can't remember how many parcels we counted in this particular area that we had in the yellow box before. But.
So the number of properties that I counted were 140 individual homes or individual parcels that were in this neighborhood that we looked at. So yes, and I guess just to build upon that question. You know, it's usage tends to go up when seasonally things become more accessible to people, and usage tends to go down. And like we saw, for instance, when the pandemic first began in 2020, we saw a literal 200% increase in the usage of our trails in the early days of the pandemic. And we've only seen increases in that since. But again, just to reiterate, Matt's answer is that, you know, different communities have different rates of trail usage, depending upon the parameters, if there's existing sidewalks or not, if there's existing trails or not. That's not what we have at our disposal at present. So this, again, was a proposal with this one particular spur in mind to potentially let neighbors, you know, have access to the trail or not. So basically, that area that is the drainage area that we were really looking at is township property. So obviously, in order to proceed with any design, we would need township approval. And so if the township sees that that is not a necessary, you know, proposal, then, you know, we may not pursue it, or we won't pursue it, as the case might be. So that's sort of the situation as it currently is.
And that's the purpose of the survey. We would be remiss if we didn't do the spur, and a majority of the neighborhood wanted to see that because, as we noted, they're landlocked and they don't have an opportunity to walk even to PW High School nearby. So we want to be able to gauge the opinions of all residents in that area. You know, as far as the actual use of that spur, you know, approximately 140 households in that area. You know, you might see anywhere from, depending on again how many people use it. You could see 5 people a day using it. You could see 100 people a day using it. You see 140. If one person from every house decides to go out for a walk or a bike ride on the trail, then that's about how much you might get on a day. So it's hard to gauge that. It differs, as Brian said, it differs by community. It'll be much different than the through trail. The main stem of the cross county trail is obviously going to see more people because it's a connector trail and it's traversing the whole township. You know, obviously our goal is not to have that come close to residents' homes and be able to keep that separation.
As an addendum to that, you know, I personally recently completed a Springfield or a trails plan for Springfield Township, which of course is a neighbor of Whitemarsh, and we did perform a survey. Montgomery County worked with the township to create a trails plan and connectivity plan for that municipality, and when we submitted. When we did our research just to sort of, again, find demand for that, we got 800 responses to a survey. And people said that 82% of the people who responded said that they wanted to walk or bike to a trail in that community. So I guess that's just one example of people who may want to use trails in a local municipality.
I have a question here about crime and trails. I guess the one thing I'll bring up in regards to this is Bucks County Planning Commission a few years ago had a trail project, and a lot of residents had concern about crime adjacent to the trail. So they did a very in-depth study on crime and trails in the area. They reached out to multiple municipalities throughout the greater Philadelphia area and beyond. And the statistics show that when a trail is put into a particular area, that the crime neither decreases nor increases. So it's indirectly showing that the trail does not have an effect on crime. The next question that we have here is asking about the trailhead parking lots having gated. If the trailhead parking lots have gated entrances, and if they are locked dusk to dawn, thereby preventing after hours parking. Brian, I'll let you answer that one.
The answer is yes, that our current policy is, and has been for decades, has been to treat these trails as essentially parks which are open dawn to dusk. And so yes, that there are certain places where certain trails where there are gates, or certain trailheads where there are gates. The first one that comes to mind is Lorimer Park, Abington, which connects to the Pennypack Trail and is a major trailhead for that trail. There are gates that are closed to that parking lot. It's a bigger parking lot than the one we're imagining for this site. And some trailheads that we have in the more rural parts of the township do not have gates at present. And so, but they are similarly patrolled by the local police force. And that is sort of the benefit occasionally of multi-use trails, is that they're wide enough to accommodate emergency vehicles, police and other fire vehicles as well. And there are gates typically to prevent other unauthorized vehicles from entering those trails. So in many cases, it actually increases access for those emergency response vehicles or police vehicles in order to enhance patrolling of those areas. We should also mention that it is standard practice for our trails to be patrolled by park rangers, county staffed park rangers. So that will be an added maintenance planned implementation for that for the trail in this example as well. So the trails will be continued to be maintained and operated by Montgomery County, which will also have rangers and other types of maintenance vehicles as well.
I'm going to drop a link in the chat. I mentioned earlier that Bucks County had done a study on crime. It was actually Northampton Township in Bucks County that did this. But if you go to chapter 8, it's page 213 of the link I just dropped. That's a really good write-up on addressing trails and the perception of crime.
And I think just to wrap up Sadil's question is that which I think is maybe what is being alluded to is that can be something that we look at when we go to design is to adding a gated, some sort of gate and a maintenance plan to make sure that gate becomes closed if that's what the township would like us to do.
All right, Mary's following up with another question asking if we have the data on how many residents have voted for the trail spur to Friends Lane. So it's an ongoing survey. Brian, do you remember what the due date we gave for folks on that was? Is that also December 31st?
Yes, it is December 31st that we are looking at that.
Okay. And when as far as posting the results of that, we'll do that on the county website, on the project website?
Yes. We can do. Yeah, again, we are obviously engaged with the township in a number of items of concern with our trail. Obviously, we will want to work with them to implement the trail on public land that they own. And again, the land upon which any spur would be accessed from would be also on township land. So similarly speaking, we would not be able to do that if the township didn't want us to. And so we would of course abide by their sentiment on that. But overall, we imagine having township officials and staff be engaged with the design moving forward, much like we do with all of our other trail projects as well. So they will be well informed of any issues that we come across, meant to help collaboratively make decisions which are in the spirit of the work that we're doing today, in gathering feedback and sort of ensuring that we're on the mark with what we're discussing.
All right. I'll go ahead and pop Brian's email up on the screen again. If you didn't get a letter, please reach out. We'll make sure that folks have an opportunity to participate.
I think the most recent letter that might be being referenced is that letter that we're talking about. So there's just the one letter that was sent out.
Tell you what, I will copy paste that in the chat. It's easier to pull up. All right. Email is in the chat. All right. Any other questions?
I'm sorry, Matt. Just to also reiterate that the survey that's being referenced is is in the link, or it's mentioned in the letter. There's a link to that survey in the letter itself, in case there's any confusion.
Yeah, and Mary, I see your next question here, that this is the final meeting of the feasibility study stage, before things move into the engineering phase. As Brian mentioned, the feedback that we get regarding the Friends lane spur will inform what goes into the engineering phase. Obviously, in hearing opinions from folks that there may need to be some more follow-up meetings specifically in regards to this, but that will occur as the process continues. Thomas, I see that your comment about the crime. Yeah, we don't have a before and after analysis specific to Whitemarsh Township as it relates to trails. So the Bucks County, it actually has information not just from Bucks County, but from Delaware County, some other areas as well. And more than one case study. I know every place is different, of course. You can't, just because it happens in multiple other places doesn't necessarily mean it'll happen in Whitemarsh. But you know, there's been a lot of other studies that have been done. I would say 95 times out of 100 that the crime rate either remains the same or it actually sometimes falls, because with the trails and formalizing it, you have eyes on the street, and before where people can just go back there and, you know, drink beer and do other things. Now that there's people back there, it kind of can drive some of that kind of behavior out.
Yes, Matt's right. There are a lot of issues at play, and you know, when it comes to either gaining access to places that were otherwise inaccessible previously can be a factor. You know, again, both for people using the trail, but also for potential emergency response or police response vehicles, that has an impact. And there's many other things that can be, but yes, but at present, you know, performing a study of the sort that was included in that Northampton study is not currently in the scope of this project. But you know, if Whitemarsh would like to pursue something of that nature, you know, we would support them in that. But at present, that's not something that we're able to do at present. Let's see any further questions.
Right, Deborah just posted a comment. She says she's very excited that Hope Lodge and other historic sites will be made accessible to the public.
Yes, that is one really great byproduct of this project, is that institutions like Hope Lodge and Clifton House and even certain parts of Fort Washington State Park, which currently have no pedestrian or bicycle access to them will now gain bicycle and pedestrian access to them, which we think is really exciting. And there's other places again that people were not able to access, which I believe they will be able to now as part of this this project, that are community institutions or community assets that that we feel and the township feels, I believe, is important to enable.
Mike just added a comment that says it's the only trail that he knows of that will be downrange of a tank. He's speaking about the tank at the American Legion on Bethlehem Pike. Yes. And it was fun talking to those folks as we were looking at where to route the trail in relation to their property. We thought, hey, this is great, you know, a connection to another piece of history there with the tank being there, and you know, they're excited to see it. It gives them visibility to their facility there. So yes, we'll be able to go up to the tank. All right. We don't have any questions at the moment. This will stick around for a couple more minutes in case any other questions pop up. We don't have any other formal part of the presentation. We do see that people are still sticking around, so we'll stick around as long as other folks stick around. We're happy to answer any remaining questions.
Matt and Roman, I was hoping to throw you another, maybe a question about, you know, the issues that we might see in Whitemarsh and the surrounding areas with sinkholes, if that's going to be an issue when we build the trail.
Yeah, it's certainly something that needs to be looked at during the design process to get an understanding of what the subsurface conditions are, because, you know, the karst topography is obviously prevalent in the area. So it will absolutely be something that's studied as we walk the planned alignment. There are areas where we are seeing erosion and sinkholes that's leading to more erosion. So some of those things are going to have to be remediated in order to build the trail. And we got another question here from Mary. Yeah, any comments related to the Friends Lane spur? If you can, one, take the survey, but two, you can also, yes, email Brian.
Yes, you can email me or just again, just ask me for the survey if you don't have it. But again, if you, there was only one, it was only a one letter that went out at this stage of the project, and that had the link to the survey on it. But if you again just want to state your opinion, you can feel free to email me, and we'll catalog that as a part of the study process.
Ed's asking a question about if it's possible that the county can seek federal and state funding for stormwater remediation as a part of these projects. So yeah, any stormwater management that's related to the trail itself would be a part of the funding that comes in with the trail. So the trail will have to manage its own runoff. Any sort of remediation of, any sort of erosion that we have to deal with to build the trail, that's a part of it. So it's all kind of built in together. Now, if there's additional management, to go back to the hot topic of the night, the Friends Lane spur, that because there are existing stormwater management issues in that area right now that the trail may be able to fix as a parallel project, then that's something that may have to be explored as additional funding for that. That's a potential. Brian, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that a little bit more.
No, I mean, I think that probably sums it up. We would seek to do any stormwater management that was required of the project. Whatever we would impact as a part of the project, we would remediate that. I know that there have been other efforts to create more sort of regional stormwater management structures or something. That I don't think we would necessarily seek to do anything outside of the scope of providing the trail itself, but if there's something that can be piggybacked upon, that's something that we can explore or collaborate perhaps with Whitemarsh Township as a for instance, or even particular properties that might be impacted by the trail. We would of course work with them to ensure that all of our standards were being dealt with and that we were not, again, putting water where it shouldn't be. But that's pretty much the standard for what we do in our line of work, is that we would seek to design stormwater management to mitigate anything that we were potentially doing as a part of the project.
People are still sticking around. They're pining for more questions, Brian.
Well, why don't we give it just a couple more minutes? We can let people prepare for the Eagles game a little early, should they desire to.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate, thanks for everybody for tuning in tonight. It's great to see people are excited about this project. People want to participate and get involved and give their opinion. So that's great that people are getting involved. That's why we do these kind of things, so that people are knowledgeable about these projects we're at one stage of the project in the planning. There will be other opportunities to learn more about the project as it goes through the design and construction processes, but we encourage everybody to stay tuned and stay involved.
Matt, I think we can give ourselves the go-ahead to wrap it up for today. But yes, just to echo what Matt said, that we wanted to thank everyone who has been on the call, has asked questions, and has continued to show interest throughout the project. Again, these projects take many, many years to come to fruition. And this feasibility study that we are wrapping up is just one step of many steps to make a trail a reality. So we're glad that you're here at this time of the project. And if you have any questions generally about the project, again, Matt put my email in the chat, and it's also on our project website. The project website has many different resources, has recordings of our previous meetings that actually Whitemarsh took upon itself to produce on our behalf, which summarized a lot of the key discussion points of those meetings that we had as well, to bring you up to speed. But yes, otherwise, I guess we will sign off. Just want to thank you again for participating. And have a good night, everyone.